Hi, everyone, and good afternoon once again. I hope your weekend is going well. You're all welcome to our 5th online session, and today's session is going to be on financial literacy for beginners. As young graduates who are starting your careers in the food and agribusiness sector, the Youth in Food program thought that it would be very crucial for you to have some tips on financial literacy to help you plan your finances accordingly as you are about to start your careers. So we have a great speaker joining us today, Benjamina. Please do a brief introduction of yourself so we know you, and then you can dive straight into the main session for today. Thank you all, and yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. How are you? So my name is Benjamina Adi, and I'll be facilitating the session today as a talent development expert for the Youth in Food program. I would love to meet each and every one of you. So if you would just unmute yourself one after the other, and then I can meet you.
Hi, so do we do little introductions or?
Yes, please.
Okay, my name is Asiminiwa.
Hello, hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Kelvin.
Hi, Calvin, nice to meet you. I see we have Esther, Zubi, Tracy, Salifu, Rita, Rhoda, Nihad, Maud, Miriam, McCaffrey, Kelvin, Jonathan, Gifty, Francisca, Esther, another Esther, and a third Esther, Ellen, Edem, Diana, Charles. I've met Calvin, Gideon Danso. So I would like some of you to share your financial goals. Do you currently have any financial goals that you're working towards?
Hello, Benjamina, just a quick one.
No
For
worries.
those that are not in a good position to speak, they can comment in the comment section, right? And then we'll read their responses and respond to it. Okay.
That's great.
Thank you. So if you're not able to contribute by unmuting your mic, kindly write your contribution in the comment section. Thank you.
Hey, just gonna
Okay, can I speak?
please go ahead.
Okay, so please could you repeat the question again so I don't
Oh, I just wanted you to, so this is just an icebreaker session for some of, before we get into the session, for some of you to just share some financial goals that you may have. It could be anything from saving for an education, saving to buy a car, saving to buy a house.
Okay. Mine would be what to do with the money that I'm saving. For
Okay.
example, currently I'm not working, so what can I do? Like, let's say in the next few years, what can I do such that if I find myself in this situation, I don't end up using all of the funds that I've saved, but then those funds could have generated something for me.
Okay,
I don't know if
fantastic.
that-
We're going to get into that. So any other person who has any financial goal? What's your name, sorry?
I'm Kelvin. I'm Kelvin.
Calvin, fantastic. So Calvin has identified his financial goal as preserving what he already has saved and having that money work for him in the medium to long term. Any other person? Fantastic. Okay. Any other person? Okay. Since no one is coming forth, I think we can just get right into it.
Someone posted something in the chat.
Okay. Oh, is this Calvin? My main financial goal is to save 1 million Ghana cedis to run my expenses in the next 20 years. Okay, Calvin, that's a very good goal. And I love that you're very realistic with your timeline as well. Very great. Any other person? Okay, so we'll just get right into it. Okay, so we all hear about financial literacy, but what really is financial literacy? Prior to this, does anyone have any understanding of financial literacy or what financial literacy means? I want this session to be as interactive as possible, so you're welcome to participate at any time. Does anyone have any idea of what financial literacy means? So financial literacy basically refers to the ability to understand and use various financial skills, including personal finance, financial management, budgeting and investing. So a financial literate individual typically possesses the knowledge and skills necessary to make informed financial decisions about money matters. So when you're financial literate, you're well equipped to make financial decisions that will impact you in the medium to long term. So effectively managing your financial resources and navigate the complexities of the financial system. So the financial systems are very complex, as we would see later on in the class. There are different ways and different tools that you can apply to grow your money, save your money, and invest your money. So there are certain components of financial literacy, and we're going to touch on a few of them today. The first one is budgeting. And budgeting simply means the ability to create and maintain a budget, allocating income to various expenses, which include savings and investments. And understanding credit as well. So knowledge about credit reports, and responsible borrowing practices. Investing, familiarity with investment options, risk management, and long-term financial planning to build wealth over time. So you have various types of investment options, and which each of them has their own individual risk. So some are more low risk and some are higher risk. And then also you need to understand how to save and establish a savings plan, which includes emergency funds and retirement savings. Also, very importantly, is debt management, understanding the different types of debt, managing debt responsibly, and making informed decisions about borrowing. So sometimes people just borrow and they don't have the capacity to be able to repay the debt, and then their debt ends up accumulating over time. But if you're a financially literate individual, then you will be able to make informed decisions and draw up a plan that allows you pay your debts effectively. And then in the case where you don't even need debt, you might look for other ways in which to generate income so as you don't find yourself in debt. Financial planning is also an important component of financial literacy. For you to develop a comprehensive financial plan takes a lot of knowledge, for you to know what to do and how to go about it. Also taking into mind short-term and long-term goals. There are some goals that you might not be able to achieve now, but within the next, say, 4 or 5 years, or like Calvin said, Calvin has a very, very good financial goal in mind. He wants to save 1 million Ghana cedis for his expenses in the next 20 years. That for me is a very, very realistic goal and very laudable. So also understanding taxation as you go into the workforce, the money that's, that will be signed on your contracts is not what you will take home at the end of the day. So you need to understand how taxation works and how they impact your personal finances. Okay, so first of all, we need to understand income and how income works. So income typically refers to the total amount of money received by an individual, household, or entity over a specific period. So it typically encompasses earnings from various sources, including employment, investments, business activities, and other financial endeavors. So some of us may have jobs. The climate in which we're in right now, I know there's an 80%, almost an 80% of youth in Ghana are unemployed. I saw a recent statistics. So you can imagine how difficult that must be. So for those who are employed, it's much easier to track and manage your finances. But for those who are perhaps unemployed or self-employed, it's much more harder to plan financially. So the concept of income is very important and integral to understanding your personal and economic finances, as it forms the basis for budgeting, saving, and investment, like I said, and overall financial planning. So there are three types of income. There are many types of income, but we'll get into three. Earned income is the money received from employment or self-employment. So your salaries, or maybe if you're a photographer, you're self-employed, you have a business where you're selling sobolo or something, that's that's your business, or you somehow do side gigs here and there. That's your earned income. And then we have passive income, and passive income is earnings generated from investments, real estate, or business activities in which the individual is not actively involved. So, for example, with passive income, you can have your money saved in a bank and you're earning interest on it, or you have a house that you're renting out and you're earning revenue on it. You're not actively working as your real estate. You don't actively, it's an asset, right? And that money works for you. Or sometimes your business activities, although business activities, sometimes you're directly involved, but there are others where you just set up a business and you might not be directly involved. You set up the structure, or maybe you're just overseeing strategy, and then you have people working for you. That could be termed as passive income. Drop shipping, I believe, is also one of those, where also could be passive income, or you're earning from a course that you have generated and you're selling. It could be maybe music that you've created and you're earning royalties on it. And then you have your portfolio income, which is your gains from investments such as stocks, bonds, or mutual funds. I don't know if some of you are familiar with how stocks work. If you don't, we'll have a session where we can ask any questions towards the end. Okay, so we're going to go over the various types of income. You have your gross income versus net income. So your gross income refers to the total earnings or revenue received by an individual, business, or entity before any deduction. So that's the total money that comes to you. It includes all sources of income such as wages, salaries, and bonuses, rental income, investment gains, and other forms of revenue. So your gross income represents the starting point in financial calculations. For example, maybe you were selling, let's just say you're selling food, for example, and you sold a plate of food for 30 cedis. That will be your gross income, right? But that 30 cedis that you received is not the 30 cedis that you end up keeping, because guess what? There's your cost of production. So your raw materials, like your ingredients, the money that you used to buy the pack that you pack the food in, maybe you may have even spent some money on marketing, all of that is deductible. So when you have your gross income, it's usually associated with, in business, you would say gross income as a revenue generated from sales or services, excluding direct costs, yes, such as production expenses or the cost of goods sold. The cost of goods sold is typically how much it costs you to produce that good that you have sold. And then for individuals, your gross income will be your earnings without considering taxes or deductions. So say, for example, your employer has said that he's going to be paying you 5,000 cedis every month, and then tax gets deducted from that money, and eventually SNIT gets deducted from that money. That's the earnings before all of those deductions is called your gross income, okay? And then for your net income is the amount of money remaining after subtracting all deductions, expenses, and taxes from the gross income. So it represents the actual profit or take-home pay that an individual or business has after accounting for all necessary costs. So that's your net income. So gross is the total cost of goods or your total amount earned, while net is the total amount that you have or profit that you have or take home that you have after all necessary deductions have been taken out. And then you have taxable income. So taxable income refers to the portion of an individual or entity's income that is subject to taxation by the government. So here in Ghana, GRA takes a portion of your income. If you're employed, you know, they take a portion. We'll get into the range much later in the course. They take a portion from your salary, and that goes to the government. Okay, so that is called your taxable income. Okay, so understanding it is very important for complying with tax regulations, especially as a business owner, because sometimes a lot of people, you know, they set up businesses and then they forget tax. And next thing you know, GRA is knocking on your door saying that you owe them. So when you understand the basics of taxation, it ensures that you are complying with the authorities, and you're actually remitting what is due to the Ghana Revenue Authority. So the sources of taxable income include employment income. That's from your wages, salaries, and bonuses, and maybe even tips. Sometimes people tip, they tax you on tips. Business income. So you definitely get taxed from your profits. If you own a business, you know, recently there's been a 10% tax on betting, which a lot of young people, you know, tend to tag betting as being self-employed. Now the government is saying, hey, you guys are making so much money, you need to give us some. So they've, you know, they say it's a means to control, but also it's taxable income. And then investment income, such as your interest, dividends, or capital gains. And then it's rental income as well. That's your income generated renting our property. I know that a lot of landlords in Ghana don't typically pay rental income. I wouldn't be surprised to see in the coming years there being a very strict enforcement on rental income. Okay, fantastic. So we're here now. So this is the basic for income tax and how tax is typically calculated in Ghana. So there are thresholds. The higher your threshold, the higher your tax rates, which seems fair. You can't, you know, expect to be taxing someone who earns about 1,500. So if you earn up to 3,120 cedis, so below 3,120, tax-free. And then when you start earning from 3,121 cedis to 7,800 cedis, there's a 5% tax rate on your income. And then 7,000, sorry, there's someone here, could the person kindly mute? Okay. And then if you earn between 7,801 cedis, 13,200 cedis, there's a 10% tax rate. Okay, great.
I
And
have a
then,
question.
yes.
Is this what is usually referred to as the withholding tax
This
on
is
salary?
on your salary. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So from 7,801 cedis to 13,200 cedis, then they will tax you 10% of your gross income. Remember earlier, we spoke about the gross income. So the gross income is typically what, so if you look at your employment contracts, they will tell you your gross pay, blah, blah, blah. And so typically when you maybe you sign up for a job, then you'd ask your employer, you know, what's the final take home pay? So the amount that, you know, they give you as your gross income is actually not your take home pay. And then from 19,501 to 29,000, there's a 25% tax rate. So you can already see that the more you earn, the more you are taxed. And then from 29,251 to 41,160 is a 30% tax rate. Okay, so we're just going to get into financial goals and goals planning. For everything in life, without a goal, you don't know what you're working towards, right? You're just floating. So it's very important for us to have financial goals and for us to plan towards those goals. So financial goals are specific objectives or targets that are related to an individual or organization's financial well-being. Goal planning typically involves the process of defining the objectives, creating a strategy to achieve them, and implementing actions to make them a reality. Okay, so individuals have goals, businesses also have goals. For individuals, your goals could be, you know, maybe doing your master's, buying a house, maybe even paying for your rent. It could be buying a new dress. For the girls, it could be buying a new wig. For the boys, it could be, you know, buying a gadget or a toy or a new watch. It could be maybe even paying for your siblings' fees, or maybe even buying a piece of land for your parents, you know, or for yourself. You know, all of these are very good goals to have. And in order for you to be able to achieve those goals, some of those goals could be met in the short term, others are in the immediate term, and then others are in the long term, okay? So we'd like to categorize them into 3 categories, and these are short-term goals. Short-term goals are typically achievable within a relatively short time. For example, 1 to 2 years. And examples could include your emergency fund creation or paying off a small debt. You know, maybe you borrowed 20 cedis from your friend and you've told her that you're going to pay her back next week. These are short-term goals. Or saving to go to Aqua Safari for the day, or maybe even saving to go to South Africa now that is visa-free. These are all short-term goals. Or for some, it could be long-term. So this is relative, because depending on your income and how much income you have at your disposal, your long-term, what could be a long-term goal for others could be a short-term goal for you, while what could be a short-term goal for others could be an intermediate long-term goal. Like, for example, Calvin's has a very long-term goal, which is 20 years. That you would quantify as a very, very long-term goal, okay? And then your intermediate or midterm goals, so will typically span a few years to a decade. For example, saving for a down payment or a house, funding your education, or starting a business, okay? And then your long-term goals will include retirement savings, purchasing a property, or just building substantial wealth, okay? Are we clear on this? Okay. So for you to be able to achieve your goals, there are certain steps that you must take to achieve those goals, okay? They're called the steps in financial goal planning. So you need to, the first thing you need to do is identify and prioritize your goals. You need to list and prioritize your financial objectives based on urgency and importance, okay? So for example, paying off the debt could be urgent, and then going on holiday could be maybe not so urgent, right? Because that going on holiday could be classified as a want. For some, it could be a need, depending on how stressed you are and how much it means to you. But you need to classify them saying, okay, this is urgent and this is important. When you're able to prioritize, then you'll be able to know, okay, what do I need to sacrifice to be able to meet this urgent need? And how important is this? For example, if maybe paying off the 20 cedis that you borrowed from Amma is urgent, if you don't pay Amma in the next 5 days, she could maybe call you out or come and make trouble at your house or do something. That is an urgent goal that you need to fulfill. So in that case, you will make a sacrifice to delay the not so important goal to be able to fulfill the very urgent goal. And then the next thing you want to do is quantify your goals. You have to assign specific amounts and deadline to each goal. So for example, you want to save maybe $10,000 for a down payment on a home within 3 years. I know a lot of the houses right now are sold in dollars. Everywhere you go, it's dollars. And then you also want to assess your current financial situation. You need to understand income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, and then identify resources available for goal and achievement. So income is typically what you earn. We established that. Your expenses are the bills that you have to pay or any spending that you need to expend. And then your assets are typically things that you will use to generate revenue or used in operation for your business. For example, your assets, if you're, I know this, a lot of you are in the food industry, your assets will be your gas cooker, your blender, all of those things. And then your liabilities are like debts or things that, need to be on your book that you need to get off. And then you need to identify your resources that are available for each goal. So for example, your assets, maybe your burner or your gas cooker, is going to give you money is important for revenue generation, and your gas cooker ends up, having a fault. That then becomes an urgent need, So you can then prioritize and say, hey, I know I want to buy this pair of shoes, but however, if I buy this pair of shoes now and my gas cooker is not working, I will have the shoe, but I will not be able to make more money. So therefore, I must fix my gas cooker first, so I will be able to generate more revenue. I hope this is making sense. Okay. And the next thing you want to do is create a budget. So you want to develop a budget to allocate your income towards goals and daily expenses and ensure that the budget aligns with your goals. Now, this for me is one of the most important step that I always advise everyone to do. It's worked for me. It's worked for so many people that I know of, and it's so important. You want to establish an emergency fund. Things are very unpredictable. We live in a very unpredictable market. COVID was an example of how unpredictable the market and the world can be. What you want to do is have an emergency fund, and also life is very unpredictable as well. You could lose your job at any time. Demand could slow on your business. You can get sick and not be able to work. You might have to take care of a sick parent or a sick sibling or a sick friend that will impact your revenue generating activities or your ability to generate revenue. So you want to have an emergency fund to cover unexpected expenses, right? Say, for example, if you lose your job, if you have, so typically what is recommended is 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. So you need to calculate your living expenses to know that, okay, in a month, I'm going to need, say your living expenses for a month is about 500 to 1,000 cedis. You want to have in your emergency fund at least 3,000 cedis or 6,000 cedis. I know that it's very hard in the climate that we're in, because it's very hard to make money, and there are a lot of people around you who may not be working and whose needs you will need to meet. So typically you might have money saved in your emergency fund, but you're taking it out all the time. I want you to know that you're not alone on that, and that's the nature of things. But as much as possible, whilst you earn, you want to ensure that you save at least 3 to 6 months. Also, in the case where you lose your job, if you have saved about 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses, it gives you enough room, to not be stranded whilst you look for another opportunity or whilst you look for another job. It's helped me in the past where, I lost my job, but I had 3 to 6 months worth of savings in my account. During that period, I then started to look for revenue generating, opportunities. I ended up setting up my own business. And within those 3 to 6 months, I had a paying client that then, was able to keep me going and etc. So this is one of the most important step in your financial goal planning that you must consider very, very, very greatly. So debt management is also a step. You want to prioritize paying off high interest debt. With debts, the interest grows. I know that the interest rates in Ghana keeps just skyrocketing. I mean, what it was 5 years ago is not what it is right now. So imagine if you had taken a loan from the bank 5 years ago and you were meant to pay off the loan, within the next 5 years, and then the interest rate just keeps skyrocketing. That's just going to put you in a hole. So any debts that you take that has high interest, you want to pay them off as fast as you can, so that they don't, work against you in the future. Okay. And then develop an investment strategy. So you need to tailor an investment strategy based on the time horizon and risk tolerance associated with each goal. So there are different types of investments, which we'll get into much later. Some of them are high risk and others are low risk, okay? And so we always advise considering a diversified portfolio. I don't know if most of you know about like the bond payments. Bonds were typically regarded as safe, or are typically regarded as safe. Right now, a lot of people are skeptical about them because the government failed to pay off, all the earnings on people's bonds. So a lot of people have their money stuck. I know I have a neighbor who used to be a very high investor in bonds, and now he has all his money just stuck there and he can't get it out. And now he's having to, look for other revenue generating businesses. Like, he's now setting up his own business and etc. So, there are some things that nothing is predictable and nothing is constant in life. So we would look into different types as we go along. Okay. And it's very important to regularly review your progress and adjust them as much as possible. Okay. Because some things might work today and then something else comes up and then you need to adjust. So all the time, you just need to look at your plan and say, okay, where am I now? Where do I need to be? What's lacking? What do I need to change? What do I need to adjust? Okay. All right. So there's something called SMART goals, and SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And the SMART concept is a widely used framework for setting effective and well-defined goals, okay? And so SMART, basically the acronym stands for specific. So you need to clearly define the goal, be precise about what you want to achieve. And instead of, a vague goal like, oh, I want to save maybe $1,000 or 1,000 cedis, 2,000 cedis for an emergency fund, such as, instead of saying, okay, I want 2,000 cedis, you need to say, okay, in the next 6 months, I want to save 6,000 cedis. So you know that, okay, if you want to save 6,000 cedis, you take a portion of your income and then save that portion, as opposed to saying, okay, I want 10,000 cedis. That's not very smart. 10,000 cedis when? Today, tomorrow? And then it needs to be measurable. So you need to make the goal quantifiable and establish criteria for measuring progress. So exactly, like I said, instead of a goal like lose weight, make it measurable, such as I want to lose 10 pounds in 3 months. That way, you know how to get there and what steps you need to take in order to get there and what tools you need to apply in order to get there. And you need to ensure that the goal is realistic and attainable, given your resources. So Calvin has a goal to save 1 million Ghana cedis over the next 20 years. He may not have those resources now, but he has a goal, right? And based on the resources that he has available to him now, he can then, measure what he has and then says, okay, this is what I have right now. This is what I need. These are some of the methods I can apply in order to get there. So for example, if your current savings rate is 5%, if you then say you want to save 50% of your income, it might not be achievable, because guess what? If you save 50% of your income, you need to pay your rent, you need to pay your ECG. ECG is very, very, very high at the moment. So a lot of people who were typically saving maybe 20% of their income earlier, if their employers have not increased their income, maybe their savings might go down because ECG is just eating into their pockets, Other things as well, cost of living is high, inflation is high, transportation is expensive, everything is just expensive. So if you had a goal maybe 2-3 years ago, it's not the same as today. You need to regularly adjust and make sure that it's achievable. And then you need to ensure that your goal is relevant. So you need to align the goal with your broader objectives and values and make sure it matters and it's worthwhile. If your goal is to buy a house, saving for a down payment is, So I know that Ghana Home Loans gives, loans, and then you have to save for a down payment. So maybe if they say you need to put up 20% of the total cost, so you need to save for that 20% so that over the next couple of years you can pay them off. And then setting a time is very important. You need to make sure your goals are time bound, because when your goals are time bound, you'll be able to plan ahead and not just, just do things as they come. It's very hard to wing things when it comes to your finances. You might end up getting yourself stuck. Okay. So we're going to get into budgeting. So budgeting is a fundamental financial management tool that helps individuals and households or businesses plan and control their spending, okay? And their investments as well, also their savings and their basics of budgeting, which we'll get into. The first one will be to determine your financial goals, okay? And then going back to what we talked about, short-term goals, which are your immediate needs, or goals, which are your rent, your ECG, your food, your transportation. Those are immediate goals that are always recurring. Like you can't miss them. You need them as a human being to survive, so they never go away. And then your immediate term goals are your goals within a few years, such as buying a car, saving for a vacation, and your long-term goals is saving for a home or saving for retirement, or, it could be saving for your kids' education as well. I always advise people to start early. You can open a high-interest account and just put money every month, for your child, even though they are not born yet. I always recommend that, because what then happens is the money turns to yield. And by the time they're ready to go to school, then it won't be so much of, a bother to you, and it won't be so stressful, and you won't have to, it also prepares you for, unforeseen circumstances. I mean, I don't mean to be morbid, but like life happens, right? If as a father, you have put aside that money and something happens to you and your wife is not maybe able to carry on that burden, then you would have saved, ahead and saved for your children. Okay, so you need to also calculate your income and include all sources of income, including your salary, your wages. Freelance work is very common here in our climate. Your bonuses, etc., even gifts that you receive from friends and family. I know during Christmas, a lot of people tend to get money and receive money. So saving for that also is very important. And then you need to consider your after-tax income. So remember what we spoke about, the gross versus net income. You cannot, plan with your gross income. Always remember that. You only plan with your net income, okay? Because if you plan with your gross income, GRA is going to come and take it away, and then you've ended up planning with that and you don't have it available, okay? And also you need to list your monthly expenses. So you have your fixed, your expenses are typically your fixed expenses and your variable expenses. So your fixed expenses are the ones that are constant, like your rent, mortgage, utilities such as ECG, phone bills, your data, all of those things are fixed expenses. You need them to, run your life or run your business or just, run yourself. And then your insurance, some of us will have like health insurance that we pay, or your car insurance, etc. These are fixed expenses and they don't go away. They're always there unless you cancel them and you won't have any insurance. And then we have your variable expenses. These are costs that can vary each month. For example, groceries, entertainment, dining out. These are not fixed because maybe you might spend 500 Ghana cedis on groceries in a month, and then the next month they increase maybe the price of chicken. So you then say, okay, I can't afford chicken anymore, so therefore I'm going to opt for eggs or meat. So these are variable, they're not constant. They change, Sometimes you might even buy groceries in bulk and you end up finding out that, you have a lot of food left over from the previous month that you don't need to buy. So these are variable expenses. And then of course, entertainment, you don't entertain yourself every day. You don't go to the cinema every day. So these are variable. And then debt payments include like, some people might have access to credit cards. When you're working, some of the banks will give you credit cards. Loans, some people take out loans to fund unforeseen expenses or even fund certain types of expenses that they need fulfilled now. And once you have those, the bank takes out the loan every month. If you fail to pay your loan, your interest rises, right? And you really don't want that. That's hence I said in the beginning that you need to ensure that you pay off your debts quickly. Otherwise, it will count against you. And then other debts like money that you borrow from family or friends and etc. Okay, so we all know, I'm sure a lot of us know this, you need to differentiate between your needs and your wants. So your needs are what are the things that are essential for your survival. For example, your housing, your food, your utilities, your data is a need right now because, we live in a society where if you're not online, you're not very efficient because people talk to you on your WhatsApp messages. Sometimes you need to search for information on your phone, on Google, etc. So data has now become a want in the urban areas, and then a need, sorry. And then your want, although it could still be classified as a want because, there are times that you can say, okay, I'm not going to use data or I'm not going to buy data and I'll only use data maybe when I'm at work or etc. When I'm off work, I can, scrap that. And then your wants are your non-essential items or discretionary spending, such as your entertainment, such as your shoes and your bags, unless you don't have any shoe left and you're walking barefoot, then the shoe becomes, a need. But typically things like shoes, bags, hair, all of those things are wants. Okay. You can do without them. And then what you also want to do is create categories. So you want to organize your expenses into categories such as housing, transportation, and groceries. This helps you plan effectively, right? So you, maybe under housing, you say, okay, this is my rent. Under transportation, you say, okay, I spend maybe 200 cedis or 300 cedis every month taking the trotro to work. Or if you take Uber, which is very expensive, this is how much I spend, you put it down. And then groceries, you could even for, the ladies, you could even maybe classify them into like, beauty treatments or however you want to classify them for your nails and your hair. Those are also, things that's, are important, grooming, all of those things. You could even maybe classify them into, some people also tend to allocate a certain portion of their budget for, I would say, other expenses. For example, a family member might want them to loan you some money or an unexpected need may arise, then you can just allocate a certain portion for that as well. And once you go over that limit, you just say, hey, I'm sorry, I've checked my budget and I can't help you this month, maybe next month, etc. And then you allocate a portion of your income to each category. And then the most important is set spending limits. If you do not set spending limits, you end up just making impulse purchases and, spending money anyhow. And then you just end up finding out that, hey, I had money, but all of a sudden I don't have money anymore. What's going on? It's because, and money is very funny. You can think that you have money and you just keep spending. And next thing you know, you look at your bank account and like, hey, where did all that money go? When you don't set spending limits, you find yourself in that position. Okay. And then also allocating the emergency fund, like we spoke about earlier, is part of the budgeting basics. Allocate a portion of your budget to build and maintain an emergency fund. Regularly review and adjust again. Adjust the budget as needed based on your changes in income. So for example, you could be earning 3,000 cedis, and as you get good at your job, so this is what typically tends to happen, right? As you get good at your job, there might be side opportunities every once in a while. You need to look at your contract also to ensure that you're not, going out of your contract, because some employers might, in their contract state that you're not allowed to take on any other like side gigs that will conflict with what they do, so maybe doing the same thing as them. But typically what tends to happen is, as you get good at your job, there are some people who might need your service and will, come and speak to you. For example, if you're a financial analyst, you always like get opportunities to say, hey, I want a pitch deck done, or I want a financial model done. And then you just do it on the side for someone and they pay you 5,000 cedis, right? Or say you are a chef in a 5-star restaurant, and then on your off days, your family member says, hey, I want you to cater. I know you're very good at cooking. I want you to cater for my bridal shower coming up. Now you have additional expenses, an additional income. So you can then review your budget and say, hey, I had initially allocated 10% of my income towards my emergency fund, but now I've had this extra income generating opportunity. So therefore, for this month, I can, instead of saving 10%, I can then add another 10% and save 20%. So that's why that's the importance of regularly reviewing and adjusting your budget. Okay, there are budgeting apps and software to help you streamline the process. I'll share some of them with you at the end of the class through Paul. Okay, and there are many apps. You can even search on your app store for different apps, budgeting apps that can help you automatically categorize your expenses and also provide insights. So they tend to also, a lot of these apps, what they do is if you log how much you earn and what your limit is, when you're going over your limits, they tend to like send you a warning saying, hey, you're going over your limit. It's time to, you know, cut it or stop, or you can put a cap to it. And then debt management also is very important. You need to include a strategy for managing and reducing debt. This is one of the most important, guys. You never want to get that, because as you start to earn, especially if you're in full-time employment, you have access to credits, because a lot of these microfinance companies especially prefer to loan money to people who have a stable income, because they know that every month without fail, you'll get a certain amount. So you tend to have access to a lot of credit. I remember like in the beginning when I started earning, you know, it was wow, I needed to pay for my rent. And typically I would have needed to save for 3 to 4 months to be able to pay my rent. But a microfinance bank, just, I saw an ad, I'm like, oh, okay, I can pay for it, you know? And then I ended up, you know, taking out the loan. And there was one time I had an emergency and I missed the payment, and it was really bad because I had to pay the interest, and you know, it was not a very pleasant experience. So I would always suggest that you include a strategy for managing and reducing debt. Try to pay off as much of the debt, because the thing about debt is if you say pay off faster, then your interest rate automatically lowers, right? So that is a high priority. And then you also need to plan for irregular expenses, you know, such as, you know, your insurance for your car, you know, holiday spending, maybe sometimes, you know, I know the dollar rate has been skyrocketing, and if it was going to cost you $500 to travel to maybe South Africa, when the dollar rate was at 10, was at 5,000 cedis, but now the dollar rate is about 12 now, which means that if you had to go to South Africa now, it will cost you about 6,000 Ghana cedis. You know, you had not planned for that, you know, in the exchange rates, and then it leaves you a little stranded. So you need to ensure that if then in that case, maybe you can dip into your emergency fund and, you know, just take out a quick 1,000 and add it to that. Okay. It says set aside funds each month for these anticipated costs. Like I said, put aside funds for, you know, helping other people, helping family members. It could even be, you know, it could even also be a health emergency. Sometimes when you don't have insurance and you have, like, you know, maybe you have malaria, or you have a very, very bad viral or bacterial infection, and you need to maybe get some drips, or you even need to be admitted in the hospital, and you have this, you know, it could even be an accident. It could be anything, you know. So having, you know, money put aside for this ensures that you're able to cater to these and unexpected costs. Okay. So lifestyle inflation. Does anyone here know what lifestyle inflation means? Anyone? Okay. So lifestyle inflation is the tendency for individuals to basically increase their spending as their income rises, right? So for example, maybe when you started with a company, you were earning 3,000 cedis, and after 6 months, you are now earning 6,000 cedis. The first thing you want to do is maybe move from your 500 cedis a month place to like a maybe 1,500 or 2,000 cedis a month place. If you were buying, you know, groceries worth maybe 300 cedis every month, oh, that's when you're like, oh, now I can afford, I can afford cheese, I can afford butter, I can afford like the Kerrygold butter, or you can afford, anything so expensive, or I can now go out and hang out with my friends every Friday. That is not very wise, because you end up just, spending your money when you should be maybe saving and investing it. So you could, when your income rises, you don't necessarily have to upgrade your lifestyle immediately, Sometimes you can delay gratification and say, okay, even though I want to live in a nicer place, what happens if I maybe stay in this place for now, at least for the next 6 months, stack up a certain amount, invest it in a high interest savings account, or maybe invest it in a side hustle, maybe buy an asset that can generate revenue. It could be anything, maybe even an ice cream machine, and you put it somewhere and you're generating revenue. That then starts to pay for your business, for your lifestyle, as opposed to you paying for your lifestyle from your earnings, if you understand what I mean. You can maybe even invest it in a piece of land. So instead of you saying, okay, I'm moving to a 2,000 Ghana cedis place, and I'm going to be paying maybe 2,000 cedis a month for 12 months, will be 24,000 Ghana cedis. Meanwhile, before you got the promotion, you were paying 500 cedis a month, right? In 1 year, 6,000, okay? So now you have 24,000 minus 6,000. If you stay in that 6,000 place, you have 18,000 Ghana cedis. Instead of upgrading, why don't you just go and buy a piece of land somewhere that ends up appreciating over time, and then you look to then build your own house? That's a very smart decision to take, as opposed to upgrading your lifestyle. Sometimes a lot of people feel like pressure from their friends saying, oh, I live in this area, so therefore people who live in this area are perceived a certain way. Nobody is going to give you free money in the future. When you're in trouble, you're typically in trouble alone. So don't pay any mind to what others around you are saying. Always ensure that you have your long-term goals in mind and you focus on them. So whatever financial decision you make should be based on your long-term goals, and not the pressure from those around you, or, the pressure that you impose on yourself. Okay. So it says, prioritize savings and financial goals over unnecessary spending. Very important. You're playing a long-term goal here. You stack up your money, you keep investing, you create businesses. In the next 10, 20 years, you'll be able to afford the life that you want. Okay. So managing expenses. Okay, I believe we've covered that. Okay, all right. So also another way you can manage your expenses is by bulk buying and discounts. So there's a WhatsApp group. I'll also share that with Paul to share with you after that allows you buy in bulk, right? And I'll give you an example. There was this body lotion that I was buying, and it was, as of 2022, it was about 14 cedis or so. And what I did was I just bought like 3 of those, and I think I still have like a tub left. And what happened was, in the next 3 to 6 months, the price had skyrocketed to about 30-something cedis, And then I look back at it, I was like, wow, that was a very, smart decision. I do that like with my deodorants as well, like my toothpaste. So things that have like longer shelf life, like your deodorant, your toothpaste, your creams, your soap, etc. If you can, buy them in bulk and just store them, because prices tend to change over time. So instead of you dipping into your savings to make up for the inflation, at least you know that for the next 6 to 7 months, you're sorted and you're stacked, so you don't need to always go back, and you won't be affected by the fluctuation in prices. Okay, you also need to look for discounts. There are also coupons as well. A lot of businesses offer coupons, and then be mindful of sales. Sometimes we get sucked into sales they say, oh, this thing is, and a lot of this is just an insight, a lot of the businesses typically make you, I wouldn't want to use the word deceive, because I mean, a lot of you are going to be business owners, so you will adopt these strategies, but like they tell you, was 2,500 cedis, now 1,700 cedis. A lot of the times on those websites, that's the actual price. They just use that to lure people to, you know, buy the stuff. So things might appear like they're on sale now. You're like, it's on sale now. If I don't buy it now, I'm going to miss out on it. No, you don't always have to fall into that trap. Just be mindful of them and just to save on your regular expenses. This one is very important. Review subscription services. How many of you have subscribed for something and forgot to cancel? And then next time, it could be something as, you know, small as a free trial, especially with our smartphones now and all the different types of apps that are available to make our lives easier. They tell you, okay, free trial for 3 days and then pay $29.99 after. I'll give you an example of me falling into that trap. So on my LinkedIn, LinkedIn gave me 2 months to try free, okay? And they would charge me, at the time it was about, I think, $40 or so, and for a month, or maybe over $50. And that was when the dollar to CD rate was pretty bad. And I was just there one day. I'd enjoyed the free trial. You know, I could see who was viewing my profile, and I forgot to cancel. And one day I had money in my account that was to be used for something else. I think it was for my expenses or so. And then, you know, I just get an alert that 800 cedis had been deducted from my account. Wow. It was so painful. But because I forgot to cancel that subscription, and it's very, very common now because you're always downloading apps, you know, you need to go on your app store and maybe every day or every week and ensure that you cancel. Or what I advise is, as soon as you download the app, go to your settings and deactivate it immediately, because sometimes we get so busy, we forget, and next thing you know, they're deducting it. And a lot of software companies know this, and they factor that into their revenue, that, you know, some people will forget to cancel. So you might not necessarily be subscribing for their service, but it's just something that you forgot. It's very important, guys. Always make sure you review your subscription services and cancel. And then you can also consider sharing subscriptions with family members. I know a lot of people used to share like Netflix accounts with, you know, our siblings and etc. You give them your login so that you don't have to pay for it. And then transportation savings as well. So you want to use public transportation or carpool. Carpooling basically means that, you know, if your friend has a car and he's going to work every day, you could say, oh, hey, please, can I join you to work every day? Maybe I'll contribute a portion of your petrol expenses at the end of the month. That's a very good thing to do. So you're not just taking, but you're also giving as well. And then you can get maybe like a bicycle if your office is not so far from your home, so that you don't have to take your car all the time, buying petrol, or, using Uber. Uber is very expensive, guys. As much as you can avoid it, the rates are ridiculous. It'll kill you faster than anything. If you can save to buy a small car, when, I started taking Uber at some point, was it 2 years ago? I didn't have a car then. And it was the time when, the dollar rates just skyrocketed. And the day I made a decision to stop using Uber was the day I spent 100 cedis. I had spent in 3 days, 100 cedis a day on Uber. And that's when I said, no, this must stop. I didn't have the car that I wanted of my dreams then. I went on Gigi. I went to look for a car, and I got a car for 10,000 cedis. It was not the best car. The engine was messed up. Everything was just really bad with the car, but it was much better than taking Uber. And that car saved me so much money. So if you can get a car, it doesn't need to be a fancy car. It doesn't need to be the best car that you want, but just get a car so you can save on Uber cost. If you can't afford the car at the time, it's okay. You can take the trotro. If your home is closer or you don't have to ride so much, you can also buy a bicycle to save on cost. Okay. Yes, and also you need to regularly service your car. You know, sometimes you don't service your car and next thing you know, your petrol, that also happened to me a lot. I was spending a lot on, you know, petrol cost and etc. Meanwhile, there was something wrong with the car and that was, you know, just zapping all the petrol. And once I had that fixed, that was sorted. Okay. So meal planning is very important. You can plan your meals in advance, like maybe a 1 week plan, etc. This is very important. And especially for the guys, I know it's very hard for us to cook sometimes. If you don't live, especially if you're a bachelor, you don't live with your mom or you don't live with maybe your sister who can cook for you, or you don't have a partner or a girlfriend who comes to cook for you. What you could do is, and if you don't know how to cook yourself, instead of buying food outside all the time, what you could do is, one, you could maybe go to your mom every week and say, Mom, here are my groceries. Could you kindly cook for me for the week and then I'll store it in my freezer? Or you can hire someone, you can hire the services of someone in your area who knows how to cook, or anyone from a restaurant, and say, hey, I'll pay you maybe 50 cedis, come and cook for me for the week. I'll store it in my freezer. So maybe if you were spending, say, every day on dining out, say maybe the food is very expensive, dining out is very expensive these days. Maybe you were spending, depending on your range, really. Some people might spend 30 cedis a day, some might spend 40, some might spend 50. Instead of spending, maybe, let's just say you were spending 30 cedis every day times 7, that's 210 cedis. If you took that 210 cedis and you went to the market for 150 cedis and you bought a lot of groceries and you pay the person, you know, 50 cedis to cook for you, and that food could last you 2 weeks. So instead of spending 410 cedis in 2 weeks on food, then you've saved yourself 50%. That's a very important strategy that I always advise people to do as well. Okay. You can even, you know, maybe do it with your friends, maybe get like 4 or 5 of your friends and say, okay, guys, let's put together 100 cedis each times 5, that's 500 cedis. You go to the market, you get a lot of food, you pay the same person 50 cedis, and then she cooks for you. That way, all of you spend money. So instead of you spending 210 cedis, then you're only spending maybe 105 or 110. So you also can take advantage of that as well. Okay. Very important, compare prices before making significant purchases. Sometimes, you know, you will see a product that you really like, and it's maybe 50 cedis somewhere where it's convenient for you. But meanwhile, you know, somewhere like 15 or 20 minutes away, you find it that is like maybe 20 cedis or 30 cedis cheaper. I don't know if a lot of you know Jiji or use Jiji. Jiji is a very good tool that I use, and I also advise people to use for price comparison. So on Instagram, you see an ad pop up and they're saying it's 300 cedis. Meanwhile, you go on Jiji and then you find it for maybe 50 cedis or 120 cedis, you know, you save yourself some money. So always, sometimes even go to the market, it might be significantly cheaper in the market. You know, the deodorant that is at the mall for 47 cedis could be like 45 or even 40 or 39 cedis in the market. So you need to check all of these things, and then sometimes also shop during sales. So the shopping during sales has its advantages and disadvantages. Sometimes, you know, you avoid them because it could be, you know, a trap, but sometimes also like Black Friday sales, for example, those are really big sales where you can really get discounted amounts. The most important one, which is very crucial right now, is energy efficiency. So important, guys. And I'm stressing this one because ECG right now, I'm sure a lot of you know, is at an all-time high. You know, I manage a business where we we used to have a lot of lights. It's a salon. We used to have a lot of lights and etc. And with the regular increase in ECG bills, we used to spend at the time 1,500 cedis on ECG. And all of a sudden, our bills had increased to almost 3,500 to 4,000 just on ECG alone. So what I did was I called the electrician in and I said, you know, we need to disconnect some of the lights. And, you know, initially they were connected to one power source, but we had to change them and offload them. And I had to do power rationing. I said, okay, if there are no clients in here, the AC cannot be on, you know, use the fan, that light goes off. You should do the same as well, you know. If you use your AC for maybe 8 hours in a day, you can reduce it to maybe 5 hours. Maybe use the fan for 3 hours and then only turn on the AC when you're going to sleep. You know, the lights, if you're the type to leave all the lights in your room on, in your house on, don't do that. Only leave the lights on when you're in certain areas, you know. There are also energy efficient bulbs as well, that also help you save on power. If you're a tungsten light lover like myself, which is not very energy efficient, you know, you can maybe opt for the energy saving bulbs. And our laptops, guys, also take a lot of power. So ensure that you don't always leave it charged all the time, you know. Your water heater, if you're not using it, only put them on when you're about to use them. If you're not using it, don't put it on. And as soon as you're out of the shower, ensure that you turn it off. Very important, guys. You find out that you will save on ECG, because if you use an electric stove, might be time to switch to gas. It's much cheaper in the long run. Okay, avoid impulse spending. So you need to have a cooling off period for non-essential purchases. Like, for example, if you're the type of, you know, lady to maybe do your nails every week or so, you could maybe opt for other types of, maybe if you were to do like a gel polish every week and you find out that they chip in every week, you maybe opt for one that is longer lasting. If you're a guy and you're cutting your hair every week, just to ensure, maybe reduce it to 2 weeks. If it won't be bother to you, or it won't, you know, like impact your grooming abilities, you know. For example, maybe if you were eating like meat every week, or, you know, chicken every week, maybe you can opt for fish, etc. Just ensure that you also have a balanced diet, you don't have any nutritional deficiencies, and just, you know, find a way to, you know, reduce your non-essential purchases. And then, yeah. Okay, yes. And then also, before you make any purchase, you say, okay, do I want this or do I need it? And if it's a need, then you can go for it. And then you can also go back to comparing prices as well to say, okay, it's a need now, but can I get it cheaper elsewhere? You know, is there someone that can, maybe if it's a service, is there someone that can offer this to me pro bono, or do I have to pay for it, etc. And then also conduct your regular financial checkups to assess your progress and adjust your budget. Okay. Yeah, I think we've covered that. So now, fixed versus variable expenses. We touched on this earlier on, but we're just going to get into them much more deeply. So fixed expenses and variable expenses are two categories used to classify different types of costs in a budget. Okay. And understanding this distinction is very important for effective financial planning. So with your fixed expenses, there are costs that remain constant each month, regardless of your level of consumption or changes in income, right? So for example, your rent is fixed, you know, whether depending, it'll be fixed. For example, if your rent is 500 Ghana cedis, right? Every month you have to pay that 500 Ghana cedis. We pay rent yearly, but you need to save that 500 Ghana cedis in your rent account so that at the end of the year, you're prepared for it, right? your loan payments, such as your car loans. Like I said, when you start earning an income, you tend to have access to a lot of benefits, such as car loans, personal loans, etc. And those they take from, they're deductible. Some of them, I know there's some loan companies that might even they're on like auto deduct. So as soon as your salary hits, they just automatically deduct it. So some of them do that as part of the contract. And then your insurance, such as your health insurance. Maybe some people have life insurance or property insurance to just insure their property against like fire and etc. Your utility bills, like, your DSTV or internet, your Netflix subscriptions, etc. Okay. So some of the characteristics of fixed expenses are they're stable and predictable. So, at least every month you have to put money aside for your rent. Every month under, your contract with your loan, if you still have a loan contract in place, that it's still going to come whether or not you like it. Even if you don't pay this month, they'll be waiting for you in the next month or the third month after. You must still pay them. And then there are set amounts, right? So you pay them each month, and then they are non-negotiable. So you can't avoid them. Like I said, even though you avoid them, you still end up paying them. Okay. Okay. And then variable expenses are costs that can change from month to month based on your consumption, lifestyle, or choices. Okay. Some of them are like groceries. So depending on your needs or preferences, this month you might want to have, maybe turkey, and the next month you can say, oh, I've had too much turkey, or I've had too much beef. I want to eat cleaner now, so I'm going vegan next month. Or I'm going, I want fish, or maybe you have health issues and your doctor says you need to reduce your red meat consumption, and then you need to opt for more white meat, then your budget will change, right? And dining out, sometimes you might want to go to a 5-star restaurant. Other times you just want to buy cocoa from the woman at the junction, or you just want to buy wache from the woman at the junction. Other times you want to take your girlfriend out and you want to impress her, and you take her to, maybe like a nice buffet or something. That varies, right? It's not fixed. You don't say, oh, every month I'm going to take my girlfriend out, or every month, unless you have a portion of your budget allocated to that, which is totally okay. And then entertainment, we don't go out all the time. You don't have, some people go out all the time, but not every day and every month. They vary, and not all prices are the same. The price for Afrochella or is not the same as the price for maybe another concert, Tidal Rave, or something. So that varies. It's not fixed. And then your electricity or water bills, like I said. So maybe this month you spend like 300 Ghana cedis on electricity, and then you say, no, this needs to stop. I need to reduce my usage. So that's a variable cost. Also, there are peak periods and off-peak periods, or, the cost today is not the same because they keep increasing the cost, right? So it's not fixed, okay? So variable expenses are more flexible and can be adjusted, and they're influenced by your choices and behaviors, and they may include discretionary spending. Okay, so variable expenses require more attention in budgeting as they can change, and it's essential to estimate and allocate a reasonable amount for these expenses based on past spending patterns. Okay, so for example, you can do a historical assessment and say, okay, over the past 3 months, I've spent relatively about 350 Ghana cedis on ECG. So maybe in month 4, I could either allocate the same amount with the hopes that I will reduce, or factor in the price increase and then just maybe increase it just by a little. Okay, that you can do with variable expenses because they're variable. Okay, so now we're getting right into saving and investing. Okay, so saving and investing are 2 essential components of building financial security and wealth. While saving involves, setting aside money for short-term goals or maybe even long-term goals, Investing is a strategy to potentially grow your wealth over a long period of time. So saving is primarily focused on setting aside money for short-term goals, emergencies, and unexpected expenses. Some people save for the future, right? Although, it's not very smart, to just keep putting money aside. You need to make money work for you because, for example, you could just be putting money aside. Inflation is eroding your savings, other things, your money is not working for you, basically. That's not a very smart thing to do. You need to make sure your money works for you. So instead of just saving, you can save a portion, yes, for emergency, but also ensure that the money works for you. There are different ways to make money, guys. There are various ways to make money. I'll get into them as we go, okay? So savings are kept in liquid and easily accessible accounts, such as your saving accounts, money markets, or certificates of deposits, which are CDs. It basically means that the CDs, you deposit money in a bank and, your bank issues that to you. Okay, so savings are typically low to no risk. So it is a secure option for preserving capital, right? Even though, savings are low risk, they have each method has its own advantage and disadvantage, right? While savings is very safe and low risk, you put your money in a bank, it stays there, nobody touches it, you go there, it's still there, right? And then maybe you go and invest in something, and then maybe the stock market, for example, and then the value of the stocks, maybe you buy Facebook stocks or Netflix or any stocks, and then it crashes, then your money is not safe anymore. Or maybe typical example, the bonds, for example, right? So a lot of the people did not want to just leave their money sitting in their savings accounts because they know that it's just going to be there. It's not really making money for them. So they instead chose to opt for the bonds, and now their money is stuck. For example, men's gold was a big, opportunity for people. Instead of just putting your money in your savings accounts, bring it to us, we'll double it for you. Now, men's gold is gone. People's money, are gone. So each strategy has its own advantage and disadvantage. This is why it's important to diversify your portfolio. So maybe if you have 10,000 CDs, you can say, okay, I'm going to save 3,000 CDs. And I will put in 2,000 CDs, maybe buying stock, and I'll put in the remaining 5,000 CDs buying an asset that can make me money, or I'll just maybe invest in some goods that I can sell and make a profit. These are ways that you should start thinking about how to manage your money. Okay, so examples of savings goals are your emergency fund for expenses, saving for a vacation. These are savings goals. Saving for a down payment on a home, or saving for buying land or building your house, etc. Okay. Savings provide a financial safety net, ensuring you have funds available for immediate needs and unforeseen circumstances. So you must always save a portion of your income, no matter what. Remember what I said about saving at least 3 to 6 months of your income. It's very important. Okay. Now we're going into investing. So investing involves putting money into assets with the expectation of generating a return over the long term. So your assets are typically anything that will give you income, right? So investing is a strategy for wealth accumulation and reaching financial goals like retirement, okay? So there are different types of investments. You have stocks. So stocks are typically ownership in a company. I don't know if any of you have bought stocks before, but if you speak to a stockbroker, or you go to the Ghana Stock Exchange, they're publicly listed companies. A public listed company is basically a company that is listed on the stock exchange, and individuals can buy shares into the companies, and those shares then are used for running the company and growing the company. And then the company then pays out dividends on your stock. So dividends are basically like your profits that you've earned for buying into the company. You can go to the Ghana Stock Exchange or speak to your broker to find out what types of stocks are there. And there are also different types of ways that you can buy stocks. For example, in startup companies, I don't know if a lot of you know about like investing in startups and stuff. For example, those that invested in Uber like many years ago when they were still starting, right now the valuation of the company has skyrocketed, and now their money is worth way much more than they put in. So there are other like, platforms that you can buy. You can buy stocks in Facebook, Meta, even Google, because, even Apple shares, they're like post on Instagram. You always see them where they say, instead of buying an iPhone, if you had bought 1,000 worth of shares in Apple, it would have been worth $10,000 by now, So these are things that you need to look at as well. And the bonds are loans to governments or corporations. Bonds are still considered relatively safe, even though at the moment, there might be, challenges with like the governments and stuff unable to pay. We're hoping that, in a few years, a few months or so, things will sort of ease up and that problem will be fixed, but they're relatively considered safe. Okay. Mutual funds are pools of money invested in various assets. So a lot of these companies, they have like a pool of different types of assets. It could be ETFs, it could be stocks, etc. It's a pool. And then real estate, where you buy a property that tends to appreciate over time. If you had a land in, let's just say, maybe Chado in 2009 was probably selling for about $5,000 then. Now if you want to buy a land in Chado, you'll be looking to, spend over like $200,000 or more. So I always advise people to buy land if you can, always make sure you put aside the money, buy land. It appreciates over time, and then it's something that, you can also build on. It's an asset. You can set up a business on, you could, build a house and end up getting rental income, etc. And land always appreciates, it never devalues. And you don't have to buy land in an expensive area. You could prospect all the areas that you see that are developing. Oyarifa, back in the day, land was very cheap. I'm sure for like 3,000 cedis, 5,000 cedis, you could get a land there. Now, if you're looking to buy a land in Oyarifa, you're looking at over like maybe 500,000 Ghana cedis, So you can start looking now, prospecting what areas can I look at now. The Eastern region is a very good place to look because Accra keeps moving up. Next thing you know, we're moving. We're at Oyarifa, we keep moving. So you can get a land for like 10,000 cedis, 15,000 cedis, you buy one there. And next thing you know, in the next 5-10 years, you're worth more than that 10,000 cedis. So instead of taking your friends out during the weekend, you can maybe go and buy a land somewhere. Okay. So examples of your investment goals will be saving for retirement, building a portfolio for wealth accumulation, funding education for your children, which I mentioned earlier. So investing is a key strategy for building wealth and achieving financial goals that have a longer time horizon. Okay. So like I said, with real estate, for example, if you go and buy land now and you sell it like 3 months later, then you probably maybe even get just an extra 5,000 cedis. But if you hold for a longer time, then you tend to get more money. That's usually a good way to lock in your capital. Just make sure you do your due diligence well and you avoid litigation-free lands. Okay. So for you to be able to balance saving and investing, because you need to regularly choose whether or not you want to save or whether or not you want to invest. There's a time for everything. There's a time for saving and there's a time for investing, right? Okay. So the way you can balance that is by building an emergency fund first, because that's the most important to cater to unforeseen circumstances. So you want to build your emergency fund with 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses in a savings account. So remember, your emergency fund is not in an investment account, because for investment accounts, they're long-term, right? You can't put your emergency fund in your investment account. That's made for a savings account, okay? So for your short-term goals, you use your savings for your such short-term goals, such as, down payments for a house, or, buying a land in this case, or for your vacation. And then for long-term goals, you then invest for long-term goals, right? Like maybe wealth accumulation, like for Calvin, who wanted 1 million Ghana cedis. So Calvin, you'd be looking at, you can go and speak to your stockbroker or speak to your bank and say, hey, is there like a high yield savings account, or what kind of, assets can I invest in now? It could be bonds, it could even maybe be even land, or Calvin, maybe even buy a piece of land and start maybe building, and you can just double your money, etc. Those are the kind of investments that you look at for wealth creation. Real estate is a very, very good, I'm sure you hear this all the time. For wealth creation, real estate is really good. That's why you see a lot of I call them Accra landlords, building like ridiculous. A lot of people in Accra right now, they don't even work. They just, they buy cheap land somewhere, build very cheaply, rent it out, get the money for like, flip the money over, depending on how cheaply they can build. They flip the money over, and then next thing you know, they go on to build the next. They go on to build the next and go on to build the next. Next thing you know, they have 10 houses, and each one of the block of apartments is probably even giving them, depending on the range, 30,000 Ghana cedis a year, some even more than 30,000. Some could go as high as 50,000 Ghana cedis, and you have that in 5 places. Then Calvin, you have those types of goals, you reach your 1 million Ghana cedis in less than 20 years. I, by the way, think you achieve that in less than 20 years. Very achievable. So you can use savings for short-term goals, and then for long-term goals, you want to make, your investments like stocks, bonds, real estate, and etc. to benefit from compounding returns. And you always need to ensure that you diversify your savings and your investments. So you can't like put everything in one basket. So a lot of the people who considered bonds safe and put all their savings and their investment plans in bonds, now they're disappointed. But maybe if they had spread it out, maybe put some in stocks, put some in bonds, put some in real estate, even setting up a business is also a very, very good investment strategy as well. It could be something as small as, setting up a small shop where you're selling water to people. For businesses like those, you don't typically need to be there. You just rent a small shop somewhere in an area that's in high demand, and you employ someone to be there. And next thing you know, even if you're making 500 cedis a week from that business, it's growing. Next thing, you can open the next. It can be selling sandwiches on the road. It can be selling pancakes. It could be selling, Hausa cocoa. You can even set up a small Hausa cocoa stand, get someone to man it, and then you're managing it as well. You invest in it, you get the nice stand, etc. All of these are, income generating opportunities and ideas. Okay. And then you also need to assess your risk tolerance to determine the right balance between saving and investing based on your financial goals and comfort with risk. Okay. So you need to look at which ones are riskier and say, okay, maybe you have a goal to get married, right, in the next 6 months. Okay. And you want to invest. At that point, you need to assess and say, if I invest in these bonds and something happens, what then happens to my wedding? I won't be able to have my wedding anymore. So in that case, you say, no, this is a priority and it's a short-term goal, and it's very risky. So therefore, instead of investing that money, I'd rather save that money. Do you see where I'm coming from? But if you know that you want to save for your child's education, for example, and you don't have a child yet, maybe you've done your assessment and you say, okay, I want to have a child in 5 years or 3 years after I get married. Okay, you can then put that money in maybe like a high or a fixed deposit account, or maybe you can buy an asset, or you can invest in bonds and say, okay, I'll just pay my child's education. You need to know what school your child is going to go to. Like I said, things are always changing. That's why it's important to review. The school that you might have in mind to go for your child might be worth 2,500 cedis today, but in a few years it's worth way more than that. Okay. And then, okay, so now we're getting into the power of compound interest. I don't know if you guys have heard of this concept before, but basically compound interest is a powerful financial concept that can significantly impact your wealth over time, and involves earning interest not only on your initial investment, but also on the accumulated interest from previous periods, okay? So for example, you put in 2,000 Ghana cedis, and let's just say you were earning 100 Ghana cedis on that amount. You don't take out that money, you leave it there in the account, okay? The next period, you will be earning no longer on the 2,000 cedis, but you will now be earning on the 2,100 cedis. So the money has grown, right? And it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, okay? So when it comes to like saving for long-term goals, you know, this works perfectly, you know? So this is how it works. So the principal is usually the initial amount of money you invest or save, which is the 2,000 cedis, and in this case, and then the interest rate is the rate at which interest is earned on the principal. So the interest rate is the earnings on the principal, which is 2,000, and it can be expressed annually, monthly, or in other intervals, depending on what you're investing in. Some will pay maybe annually, some will pay monthly, some pay biannually, you know, some pay quarterly, depending on what you're investing in and what the terms of that is. And then the compounding period is the frequency at which interest is added to the principal. So you know, depending on how frequent, you know, says include annually, semi-annually, quarterly, or monthly. Okay. Okay, so here we have the annual equals to the principal, okay, and the value of the interest, including the loan plus the principal amounts, that's the initial investment, and then R in this case is the annual interest rate, okay, and N is the number of times interest is compounded every year. And then the T is for the number of years the money is invested or borrowed, and compounding over time. So in each compounding period, the interest is calculated on both the initial principal and any previously accumulated interest. So your money just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. So for Calvin, who wants 1 million, compounding interest will work for him in this case, right? And it just keeps growing. As long as you don't touch it, it just keeps growing and just keeps growing and just keeps growing, okay? So let's say you invest maybe $1,000 or 1,000 cedis at an annual interest rate of 5% compounded annually, right? So after 1 year, you would have about 1,050 cedis. After 2 years, your 1,050 1,000 Ghana cedis plus your 50 now goes up to 1,102. And then after 10 years, you see that it keeps growing, right? This amount is small. If you have more money, it just keeps growing, okay? So the benefits of compound interest is it leads to exponential growth and significantly boosting the value of your investment over time. It also allows for long-term wealth accumulation. The longer your money compounds, the more it grows, because you don't take it out, you know, it just keeps increasing and they pay you interest on the growth. And and you don't need to do anything. It just works for you, okay? So earnings from your interests are reinvested, contributing to a larger base for future interest calculations. And then, so compound interest also applies to loans as well, okay? And understanding it, remember I said earlier on why it was important to pay off your high interest debt early, because if you don't, then the compound interest also applies. So for example, if you say, okay, this month I don't want to pay because I want to do something else, you might think that you're solving a need or you're helping yourself that month, but it's going to catch up with you on the next month. And the more you delay your debt payments, the more your interest rate on your debt also compounds. So you find people that are in like deep debt that they can't get out is because they fail to pay their debts, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And next thing, a debt that they could have cleared off a year ago because they made maybe bad financial decisions, or maybe life happened to them and they were unable to pay, their debt keeps growing and they just end up being in very deep problems. So you want to take very good note of that, to know that as you're saving for compound interest, when you're in debt, the same also applies. Okay. All right. So we have about 5 minutes more in this session. I will just open up the floor for any questions that you might have. More like 10 minutes. Does anyone have any questions? Or okay, Keziah.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Keziah. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. For me, I actually wanted to make a suggestion, or let me say, add to what you said.
Okay.
Yes. So I currently work at Prudential Life Insurance, and when we were talking about the insurance, I was very happy to hear that because with one of our insurance policies is like an insurance plus an investment policy. So at the end of the term, if let's say you choose 5 years or 10 years, you get your money plus an interest on it. And then aside that, let's say in case of unforeseen circumstances, such as maybe you got into an accident and then you become disabled, you'll be given an amount of money to cater for yourself. Aside that, too, we have when death occurs, right? Let's say there's some assured, there's some they promise to give you at the end of the term is, let's say, 500,000 Ghana cedis, right? So at the end of the term, let's say you pass away before that the term you choose, you'll be given 3 times, the family will be given 3 times that amount of money. So I think insurance is also a very good way to invest, yes. And with the educational policy, the educational investments you were talking about as well, with that you can start paying, you can start saving money for your family. But sometimes people do that and then they pass away during that period, yes. However, let's say you plan to save for 8 years for your kids. Maybe in 8 years you think you would have given birth by then. However, let's say you pass away maybe on the 7th year or on the 5th year. The amount of money you were paying, the insurance is going to pay for you till that 8th year elapses.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. And your child is given amount of money every single year. So it's like an investment, savings plus insurance, just in case anything happens. So I just wanted to add that to it, so that anyone who might want to also consider that can add it to their plans. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Keziah. That was very helpful. So as you heard, Keziah, I think that those of you who will be interested in this should reach out to her after that so that she can give you more insight. But that's a very good one as well, because, things happen. For example, especially with, as our parents start to age and etc., anything can happen, and, they could just, pass away and stuff, and maybe you're saving for a house instead. Now you need to think of funeral expenses or etc., and that could significantly derail your financial goal or your financial plan, and you want to avoid that. So that's also very good. Thank you so much, Keziah. Any other? Okay. I have, okay. I can see 3 people have raised their hands. You could go one after the other. I can't see the names. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, hello,
Hi. Sorry, what's your name?
Daniel.
Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
Yeah, so my own is a bit of a contribution that I want to make to
Okay.
the invaluable knowledge that you have provided to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to add is when you were talking about the types of investments, one of the things that I think is most important for this generation that we need to consider before doing any other thing else is what self-invest. I'm sure you have touched, you've touched on that a couple of times, but maybe you didn't come more specifically. So what I mean by the self-investment is that in everything we do, we need to invest in ourselves first. Like we are doing right now, what we are doing is selling our time to gain the knowledge that you are providing for us.
Right.
So now, taking that further, we can invest in ourselves by learning certain specific skills that we are passionate about. We pay money to other people to learn the course and then invest the money or invest the time to develop that skill and make financial income out of it. For example, if someone wants to invest in a stock or bond market, you can't just go to a certain startup and say, this is my money and I'm buying your shares. No, you need to know how to do it first. And you need to know how to identify the trends of the market. You need to know which type of business you are going into, which type of bond that you are buying. All of that is individual based. And you need to invest your time, your money to learn that particular knowledge. And that is what I will share for us to consider when we are going in about on our daily business. Thank you.
Fantastic. That was very helpful. Great insights. Yes, he's right. You need to regularly invest in yourself, invest in your knowledge, take short courses, take classes, build high income generating skill. There are different types of, side gigs that you can do. You could learn how to build a website. You can learn maybe graphic designing. You can even learn how to do a pitch deck, create a business plan for businesses. There are skills such as digital marketing, which is in very high demand right now. You could learn that as well. And also you need to also know, before you get into any investments, have knowledge of, the investments. Usually you would speak to your financial advisor for advice, but what happens when you're already knowledgeable? No one can bullshit you, sorry to say, and no one can, tell you this is this when that is that, because you're very grounded in your knowledge. So thank you so much for that wonderful insight. Next person, please. Hello? Yes. Oh, sorry, your voice is very faint. I can barely hear you. Could you kindly just speak up a little bit?
Okay. How do I make invest? So how do I save? Okay. If I have so many financial commitments to make.
Yes. Okay.
For example, say I'm earning 1,500 a month, right? But then my siblings, my mom, and then my actually sometimes have to send money back home to support them, and then I also have personal expenses and personal since I have to buy and it's like there's not such a situation. What I'm earning is not so much because I'm teaching from more like a family man. I have no children, no wife, but I have more than that. Okay, how do I save? How do I even make money to invest or make this investment in personal? And for once, if I had say maybe for once I had 1,000 students for one account that what would be the best, or what financial advice would you give? What would be where would be the best place to invest that money?
Okay, you said you earn about, sorry, I didn't hear, you said you earn about 1,000 cedis a month? 500
Yes.
cedis a month?
1,500.
1,500 cedis a month. Okay. So typically how much do you spend when you're done with all of your expenses at the end of the month? How much are you typically left with? Are you I know it can be very hard to save on that amount. Sorry, I can't hear you.
At the end of after making all those financial commitments, I'm left with nothing, literally nothing. Because I've sent some almost 1.5 back home. I've buy I tend to buy groceries, buy food stuff, and pay bills, know that. So literally at the end of everything, I'm left with literally nothing.
Okay, so typically you'd want to allocate your budget into about 50% for your needs, which will be your rent, etc., food, utilities, and then 30% for wants. Like I said, it's very hard to quantify needs and wants because if you have to cater for your siblings and your mom and everyone else, for me, I would classify that as almost a need as well. But you can reserve 30% for that and then dedicate 20% to your savings and building an emergency fund. Now I know, and because I'm very realistic, I know that it can be very, very, very difficult given our current climate in Ghana, with inflation and etc. It can be very, very, very hard to save on that amount. But if you would go back to all of the resources and knowledge that I shared earlier with like food, for example, reducing your utility bill. I don't know how far you work from home. Maybe if you work very far from home, you could maybe consider moving closer to your workplace to reduce your cost on transportation, or find out if there's anyone in your office that you can carpool with or ride share with. If you use AC, maybe just try and reduce that to maybe 2 hours per night or so, to reduce cost on the ECG bill, because the ECG bill is very high these days. And then food, etc. And then most importantly, you need to start considering getting an additional source of income. So what you need to do is you need to do an audit of the current skills that you have, and which ones you can monetize. I always say that we all have skills that we can monetize. There's something that you're good at that someone can pay you for. It could be a hobby that you have. It could be knowledge that you have. For example, if you have knowledge in a particular field, you can start teaching people this knowledge. Or maybe if you have skills in a particular area, you could look for people who, need your skills. Sometimes people don't want to go and pay a business to do a service for them. If you can offer those skills, you can find people around your area that you can offer those skills to, and then you can start learning new skills as well that can pay you on the side, So there are a lot of them that you can do online these days, like digital marketing is one of them. I know photography is a very good one that ensures that, I also have a background in media as well. And, I remember when I was, young and in school, I picked up photography back in 2009, and it enabled me to get a job that changed my life and changed my career drastically. And I was able to earn money, just from taking pictures at weddings and etc. So that's also a good skill to have. But you need to also do things that just do an audit of where you are right now, what skills you possess, which ones can be monetized, and things you like, how you can turn your hobbies into, an income generating activity. And if you need to learn new skills, find out what skills are in demand right now in the market, and then learn these skills. Take your time. There are free resources on YouTube that you can learn. And then website development. There's a class called Curious Class. You can look them out. I'll send the number of the founder to you, to Paul, so he can share it with you. They teach you how you can build a WordPress website for, I think the class is 100 CDs, and you can learn that skill. So that's a good investment. You can maybe develop that skill. And typically people pay you about 2,500 Ghana cedis to build their websites for them, you know. So if you can learn that skill, you can even get, you know, remote jobs. WordPress developers are always in demand, and they earn about $50,000 a year. So I'll send the resource so you can reach out to Curious Class to learn that skill, and just, you know, other skills. It can be doing, like I said, it can be something as small as opening up a water shop. You can be selling drinks maybe in front of your house or something. Invest in a fridge and you're selling drinks. All of these things that contribute. Is that helpful?
So, man, thank you.
Okay, you're most welcome.
But I had also wanted to ask that if I had 1,000 students, as a financial advisor, what would be the best place to invest such money?
The best what?
It wasn't answered. What would be the best place to invest such?
The best, sorry?
The best place to invest such money, or how can I invest such money?
The best place to invest your money. It depends on your financial goals. Like I said, it depends on your financial goals and your needs. You know, if they're long-term goals or etc., you could look at bonds, you can look at stocks, you can look at, you know, just putting it in a high interest savings account. There are other ones, but for your income right now, you know, like you said, saving is quite hard, and you know, you can allocate a portion, 20% of that money, but realistically speaking, it might not be able to cater to your midterm needs at the moment. I don't know what your needs are. You'd have to do that assessment. But you know, at this point, you know, I always advise people trying to, you know, look for additional sources of income to just, you know, boost your income level. And then you can go and speak to your bank as well, and then they can give you further advice on which, you know, options will be best suited based on your needs and your goals. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Priscilla.
Yes, please, let's wrap up. I mean, let's keep it short so that we can wrap up. I think we're 10 minutes past our closing time. Right?
That's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, Priscilla.
Yes, please. Good afternoon. Please, my question is, hello.
Hi, Priscilla. Hi.
Please, my question is, at what time do you touch your emergency funds? Because sometimes I tend to, you know, touch it and then later realize it's not an emergency at the moment.
Right. So the emergency funds are, as the name implies, supposed to be for emergencies. But like I said, there are times when, you know, you won't have an emergency and you've run out of money to meet your basic needs and wants, and then you end up touching that. And it's okay. It happens to the best of us, you know. Sometimes, you know, you've run out of money so badly, or you've spent all your money because unexpected needs and wants have arisen. And those are what emergency funds are for, actually, for unexpected needs and wants. Because you might have your budget for the month saying, I'm spending this on food and I'm spending that on groceries. And next thing, somebody calls you and says, oh, I really need money. I really need you to help me. I'm sick. I'm this and that. That is an unexpected need. So you can dabble into your emergency fund for that. But as much as you can, just ensure that you put it back. And emergency funds, so if, for example, you're not earning an income anymore, you lose your job, right? And maybe you lose your job in January, and you're not getting paid in February and you've exhausted all your money for January, then you can tap into your emergency fund that you have saved maybe 3 to 6 months and use that for your February expenses, March expenses, whilst you actively look for another job or look for other revenue generating opportunities through self-employment or freelancing or, you know, maybe doing business.
All right, thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Okay, I think I can take one more. Any other question? Okay. Well, I guess we can call it a day.
And Liz, before we end it, is there any way we can reach out to you and so that person?
Hello. Hello. Hello, Benjamina.
Yes, I'm here. I can't really hear him.
Sorry, I was saying, is it possible for us to see you one more time? Some of them hadn't joined at the time you turned on your camera. I think your camera was on at the beginning of the session.
Right. Okay, but fantastic.
Yes,
just
great. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Nice. That's great.
Hi,
Was
you
it?
can see me now.
Sorry?
Yes.
Nice to meet you all.
Please, was someone asking a question?
Yes, I think he was asking a question.
Wow. If it's not loud,
Friends today, enemies tomorrow.
hello. I think it's okay. If they have any questions, they can leave it in their WhatsApp group. We have a platform for them. And then maybe we can share it with you to give a feedback, and then you can share with them.
Okay.
Yes, but any last words from you, and then we can bring the session to a close.
No, thank you all so much for being in attendance. I really enjoyed it and I loved all your questions. I will share further learning and resources with Paul to share with you.
Let me just mute them. I have a feeling the noise is coming from somewhere else. Sorry.
I think someone was asking how we can reach out to her personally.
Oh, Benjamin, I think your mic is muted. Sorry.
Okay, you can share my number with Paul. You can share my number with them, or maybe add me in the WhatsApp group so that I can answer any questions. I really, really, really would like to continue my conversation with some of you on how you can, you know, have like additional revenue generating streams as well, because there's so many opportunities. You know, sometimes I have opportunities for people looking for jobs. I have roles in businesses that I manage that they're also looking for jobs and looking for roles to fill. So I will be happy to give out opportunities where I can.
That would be great. This is actually some of the things that we are looking out for on this platform.
Fantastic.
And what I would say is maybe we can book you for another maybe 1 hour session to complement another session that is coming up on alternative revenue streams that they can tap into.
That would be very good.
Supplement their incomes. Yes, that was what was on my mind, but I'm really happy that you mentioned it. And thank you very much for spending your Saturday, your weekend with us and sharing this. It has been very useful and insightful for all of us. And for the youth, thank you very much for joining once again. I'll see you next 2 weeks. We have another important session coming up. I'll share it on your platform. And don't feel free to communicate or share anything on the platform, like she said. And I will share it with her. And I can put her number in there for you to contact her as well, for any consultancy or any advice that you may need. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, kids. Yeah.